So, in sharp contrast to the previous battle which took place on Moria, which of course is quite constricting, this one takes place on Belfalas, which is the opposite of constricting. There's a lot of room for manoeuvre. Of course, there are some defensive points in the battle, but in a custom scenario, that's kind of required most of the time, so that the battle has a bit of flow and it isn't over in 10 minutes. Even so, this is a Horton scenario that is below 30,000 frames, so this is faster paced than most of the things that he does make, and again I presume that is based on the fact that this is probably the most open map I've seen one of his scenarios go into pretty much since he started making them, I think. There was one very early on when I first played his scenarios, which was a Dwarven defense, which was a bit more open, but even so, this one even more so. So this was a scenario that I was not part of. I think Escal Nordia was the one who organised this, and it looks like Donald Kingslayer was also playing. It was one or the other, because both of them are known for organising scenarios now that Spawn of Sauron has sort of moved on to its own sort of sub-Discord, because the primary Third Age Reforged Discord is getting a bit crowded for space, as it were. So let's go through the army compositions of the defenders first of all, which I believe all of the defenders are playing as Dol Amroth, so they've got some elite armies indeed. First of all, we have Donald Kingslayer's army, who is defending this middle position. He's got some white knights as his general. You can see Imrahil over in the background over there. Two trebuchets, of course. This is going to be quite similar to the previous time I showed Bay of Belfalas, only instead of Umbar attacking, it will be the Orcs. And I believe that Dol Amroth have got a few more elite units to compensate for that, because the Orcs, when they're horde moding it, tend to do better in open scenarios like this. Tirithea marksmen, so again, the skirmish advantage is going to be well and truly in favour of Dol Amroth, provided they keep their formation tight. Then over here we can see some Haven Guard. We've got some Edelond Halberdiers, a very powerful unit. I think probably a little bit too powerful for their price point in the current patch. We've also got some Tarnastian Guard. They're actually the opposite. They're the one Dol Amroth unit I would consider to not be worth it at the moment. I can't really see a situation in which you would pick these guys over the Men-at-Arms in the current patch. We've also got some Talon Knights here, so a lot of the elite forces of Dol Amroth, again, more Halberdiers, going to be excellent at holding the line. And then over here we've got more Haven Guard and some Tirithea Wardens, and there's also a Catapult. This central position is always going to be what's defended by the sort of the deployers on this side of the map in Belfalas, and we've got some Belfalas Marines named for the map, and also we have the Dol Amroth Archers, just to give a bit more skirmish power. We've also got the Knights of the Silver Swan, in my opinion still the best looking cavalry unit in the game, even though they might not be as good in the long run as the White Knights. Then over here we've got more Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms, and then down here I believe this is some of Glowbox's army. So we have Edelond Halberdiers, we've got some Talon Knights, we've got Tirithea Wardens, Tirithea Marksmen, Dismounted Swan Knights Standard, and Haven Guard and Tirithea Wardens. Now let's go over here to where, again, this was a cav line in the previous time I showed Belfalas, and in Horton's version of the scenario it is once again where the cavalry is going to be deployed. Two Tirithea Knights, and then two Knights of the Silver Swan, and then at the end we've got one White Knight. It's a very lethal cav force. Glowbox is a pretty good player as well, so he will certainly know how to use that cavalry. And then over here we have the rest of his army, which is going to quickly retreat. This is how it generally goes on Belfalas. You're going to want to retreat to the central position. If the attackers can cut these guys off, it will save them a big headache in the long run. But we've got some Men-at-Arms, we've got two units of Belfalas Marines, some Dol Amroth Archers, more Men-at-Arms and more Tarnastian Guard. Now let's move around to all of the attacking armies. So first of all we've got Stewed Fungus playing as Mordor, Orc Fodder. Again, I think this is a 2v4. So again, you can expect all of these Orc armies to be much lower in quality than the Dol Amroth ones, but they have a huge numbers advantage. So we've got some Orc Raiders, Uruk Halberdiers, we've got some more Orc Raiders over in the background, more Orc Fodder, more Raiders, some Uruk Halberds. The Halberds are going to be very important because they're the one unit that can do some genuine damage in this army, and the Maulers, but they will die very quickly. Standard Uruks, Orc Archers, Uruk Archers here. The Saurons will be decent if they can get into melee, if they're not skirmished down first. Some Morgul Chosen, a little bit more survivability. Uruk Archers, Uruk Bodyguard, and then finally the Olag High. So he's got some units of quality, but mostly we're talking trash, which is, you know, as expected. Over here we have Escal Nordia. He's the one who he's the one who hosted the scenario. Horton, of course, made it. We've got two Warg Riders to try and combat the Dol Amroth cavalry. We've got several units of Marauders. He's playing as Gundabad. So the Marauders will form a decent front line. They are armor piercing, but they are, of course, very, very bad in sustained melee against elite units. Then we have some Gundabad Guard, we have Black Orcs in the mountains. Back here we have some of the more elite forces. This Gundabad army, I believe, is the best one that the attackers have available to them. Orc Halberdiers, more Orc Halberdiers, and then back here we've got Guardians of Khan Doom, Witch-Realm Hammer Guard, some Scourge Raiders in big blobs, more Guardians of Khan Doom, and then back here 2 Witch-Realm Pikemen flanking a Black Guard, and then some Trolls of Gundabad. So yeah, a decent Orc army this will be, provided it isn't savaged on the approach. This army should actually go in last, so as to not bear the brunt of the artillery. And then over here we have 2 armies, one, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, played by Tundra's Fox. He's got Mountain Uruk archers at the front. He's also got some Heavy Goblin spears, Heavy Goblin crossbows. They could potentially be very useful in the late game. Uruk pikes, again, you don't want to commit your crossbows or pikes forward early on against a Dol Amroth position like that, because they will just be shot down. A lot of pikes and halberdiers though. He's also got Heavy Goblin infantry to form they're actually a decent lower tier infantry unit because of their armour. They will stand up to the archers better than some of the other lower tier orcs, like the Orc Marauders will get melted by them despite the shield. The Heavy Goblin infantry won't do quite as badly. And then over here we have some Orc bodyguards as the general. And then over here we have the Mountain Uruk Blades, at least I assume that's the general. It's hard to tell them with the Misty Mountain general because he looks exactly the same as most of the other units. And then he's also got some Volks champions, again, trying to combat the Cav, but that's something that Dol Amroth will definitely have in their favour. And then some Mountain Trolls, and then the final army we have over here, played by Egg Slop on top, is another Mordor army. He's got Olag Kai, he's got lots of Uruks in loose formation, he's also got some fodder. Then over there he's got some Orc Raiders in shield wall. And then he's also got some Melkor's Chosen. That will be a very lethal unit provided it can be used correctly. He's also got Temple Inquisitors, so better than the other Mordor army. Two units of Olag Kai, a lot of, looks like some Maulers in there as well. And then back there he's got several units of Halberds, Sauron's Will, and standard Uruks. So let us begin. Again, not quite as long as most Horton scenarios, only 24,000 frames. That's still fairly sizable when you think about it. I'm surprised actually, usually the host of a scenario like this wants to be on the defending side, but Escal Nordia wanted to play as Gundabad, it seems. So yeah, this is where the initial action, I'm pretty sure, will be, because there's no Orc cavalry on the other side, so they won't be able to charge down those units that are just sort of out on their own near the watchtower. But over here we have the Dol Amroth cavalry. Looks like they are going to ignore going after both the Mordor and Misty Mountains army over here. Don't blame them because of the presence of the crossbows and the Melkor's Chosen. If you want to get the best out of your cav, you want to avoid units like that. They're just going to set up a defensive position so they don't charge right into trouble, which is, you know, very wise. Again, the artillery position that you occupy here in the centre here on Belfalas is going to be it's a very difficult nut to crack, but as the defenders you can't afford to just sit back and hope that the defensive position is enough. Meanwhile, if we look over here, Escal Nordia, just a few grazing shots on some of his Witch-Realm Scourge Raiders. Again, I would say that his army is probably the one that you want to focus down the most, because it has the most in the way of scary units within it. And again, that's a pretty nice shot. Managed to snipe out a few wargs there. You can see that the cavalry over here is... Glowbox is usually quite aggressive, so I don't imagine that him sitting back is going to be a problem with his cavalry, but if they were going to choose an army to expend all of their cavalry out here on, it would be Escal Nordia's, just to remove a lot of those elite forces. Again, these Warg Riders are sort of coming over, but 2 units of Wargs are not going to be enough. He's going to need the support of his allies, Melkor's Chosen and Bolg's Champions, if he's going to stand a chance over here. Interestingly enough, I don't think he's going to wait for them though. Lance is down from the Knights of the Silver Swan. And off the charge, the Knights of the Silver Swan would do quite a hefty amount of damage to the Warg Riders. Yeah, you can see that over 10 of them die to the charge, and over there it's going to be much the same story. A lesser charge on the White Knights. But even so, the White Knights in sustained melee are going to be very, very good. There's Imrahil. There are, of course, 2 versions of Imrahil on this map, or in this match. You can see that this Knights of the Silver Swan is going around here. Wargs are anti-cavalry. But if you allow them to be charged by heavy cavalry, they're going to lose because they don't have the staying power. They're much more a sustained melee combatant. And over here we can see Donald Kingslayer is also bringing his Knights to the Silver Swan. And we can see Escal Nordia is going to quickly find himself subject to all of these cavalry charges. The Tirathea Knights don't have hit points, but of course against a unit like Orc Marauders it's not going to matter. The artillery is also bombarding his position. So they definitely looked at him as the primary threat with some of his nastier units down here. We can see another cavalry charge into the Guardians of Khan Doom. And the Orcs should win this. they do have the advantages in their favour. Again, if we look here, the cavalry, you don't want to get friendly fire with that artillery, and he's lucky he didn't. And while if we look in here, the Knights of the Silver Swan with their lances down, scything through this unit of Orc Marauders. And again, the Dol Amroth. The Dol Amroth units look so good. As we can see, the cavalry is sort of running amok in here. They are starting to lose some of their unit models on the Tirithea Knights now. Now that the Trolls of Gundabad and the Witch Realm Pikemen are also on hand, it's going to be a little bit more tricky. You can see here, though, the I'm just going to get a quick screenshot there. Not entirely sure what thumbnail for this is going to be. Something chaotic. But yeah, we can see that the elite Dol Amroth cavalry is pulling out. There's still a healthy unit of Tirithea Knights here, but this one got caught by the Pikes and the Trolls. But it is chaos. I mean, if you look at Ascal Nordir's army, you can also see here that Stewed Fungus is pulling across his army, so that they do need to get their cavalry out of there into the back of the map, I feel. Otherwise, their cav is going to get trapped. Of course, they could just keep being aggressive with it. That does mean, of course, that you need to make it count. And that's going to be a charge, and that charge is going to connect with the Trolls, and that's the key to dealing with Trolls with cavalry. In sustained melee, you can take quite a few losses to Trolls of Gundabad. But if you can charge them, then you're going to get some kills. There's a bit of friendly fire going on there from the Dol Amroth archers. Tirithea Knights getting some nice hits on the Guardians of Khan Doom. Again, all of this artillery firing in as well. This does, of course, mean that the Orcs on the other side are going to be able to advance relatively safely. There's still going to be some archers, of course, making it difficult, and there's the catapult. But of course, over here is where the primary focus is. And again, these Guardians of Khan Doom, they're such a good infantry unit normally. They are being absolutely smashed into oblivion by the Dol Amroth cavalry. As you can see here, there's this Dol Amroth cav. Just all at sea. Again, another screenshot. I'm not going to take any more, just for fear of it crashing. Look how many orcs there are on the field. This Dol Amroth cav is kind of trapped at this point, though. Knights of the Silver Swan, well, that's very unfortunate as well. Trapped and friendly fire. My.
Like this, we will smash the enemy.
Although they are blobbing up. They can get some artillery shots on something like the Witch Realm Blackguard over here. That will be a real win for them. But yeah, these Knights of the Silver Swan, they went in too deep. They are now being made to pay for it. Meanwhile, on the periphery over here, most of Glowbox's cav is still doing pretty well. Although, the support from the Misty Mountains has finally arrived. The Mountain Trolls, backed up by the Bolgs Champions, are going to be able to get quite a lot done, but there is going to be a counter charge from these Knights of the Silver Swan, a side charge from the Tirithea Knights, and then a rear charge from the White Knights. The Bolgs Champions, though, unlike standard wargs, do have the survivability to weather this storm, and in sustained melee it takes a very strong cav unit to beat them. I think that the Elder Kingsguard are one of the few that can do it, but not these units, because these units have already seen combat, so they're already going to be slightly weaker, and these Bolgs Champions are going to pull out. Of course, we will get onto the infantry engagement in just a moment, but over here it looks like all of the cavalry has been dealt with. So over here, Stewed Fungus is going to be leading the way. He's got the lesser army, of course, so it does make sense. But of course, Mordor are really not going to enjoy going up against Edhalon Halberdiers, because what little protection their armour does give them is going to be almost completely negated by these halberdiers, and also there are javelins here and there. Meanwhile, on the other front, we can see that the sort of side passage up here is being blocked by a single unit of Tirithea Wardens. Now, as long as they're just dealing with Orc fodder like they are at the moment, they will hold easily. But they do need to sort of ready units to get to sort of support them down there. And at the moment, there's only javelins and archers. There is a unit of spears as well. Interestingly enough, this unit of White Knights is still going to remain up here. I would recommend getting them out and sort of in the trees in the back over there, just so that they can be used to rear charge later on, because if they're in here, that means they're going to have to charge and wade through the sea of orcs. Meanwhile, these halberdiers are being attacked in the side. Victory is still almost a certainty despite this, and they are up against enemy halberdiers, Uruk halberds, which are not a terrible unit. So these halberdiers are going to hold. Meanwhile, they are also going to get encircled by standard Dol Amroth men-at-arms. The key for the orcs here is just to try and bottle the defenders up and then just wear them down. If they allow the Dol Amroth cavalry to remain a presence on the field, they're going to struggle. Meanwhile, these Bolgs Champions over here, we missed a little bit of action, it seems, because the Melkor's Chosen have arrived, and that does mean that Glowbox's cavalry is going to really struggle now. The Melkor's Chosen are a fantastic cab-to-cab unit. When you combine them with Bolg's Champions and some admittedly depleted mountain trolls, they're going to really struggle. Although they do have a lot of room to move around in, and the Dol Amroth cavalry is faster. Some of the Bolg's Champions are falling to arrow fire, so Dol Amroth are targeting them at least. But Globox is going to have the room to move these cavalry around, and that's why I think Donald Kingslayer should really be moving his White Knights outside of this sort of defensive island that Dol Amroth occupy, because it gives them the opportunity to charge. And if you have to move through units, you're going to take too many attritional casualties for it to be worth it. The single unit of Tirithea Wardens is still going to be enough to hold on against all of this fodder. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the position that they've occupied is a rather interesting one. They've got a sort of it's not really a noob box, but it extends out to the flat ground. Meanwhile, we also have, if they were going to do this, I would question the usefulness of sending these Dol Amroth men-at-arms out here in the first place. We can see over here there's a unit of Sauron's Will. Oh my, there goes the Mordor general with the Melkor's Chosen being sniped out by the Dol Amroth archers. That must be the Nimrodel Rangers, I assume. I think, I wasn't actually aware of this before, but I think the Nimrodel Rangers do actually have armor-piercing arrows. Which again, they probably won't in the next patch, but Rangers are getting their own buff. So yes, indeed. The artillery for the defenders is going to be absolutely crucial. They're going to need to get some very nice hits, and those were misses, unfortunately for them. You can see the catapult is also being moved around here. There's archers. So this is where the frame rate is probably going to start to struggle a little bit, unfortunately. What are they going for over there? Black Uruks? That's not a bad target. But yeah, the Orcs are now sort of getting ready to swarm around. These Tarnastian Guard. These Halberdiers and Men-at-Arms were kind of wasted, to be honest, and waste is the one thing you cannot afford when you're outnumbered 2 armies. And again, these Morannon heavy maulers have charged into these dismounted Swan Knights. Not a bad engagement for the Orcs, honestly. They will probably lose, but they will do enough damage that whatever follows them in will be able to smash through these Swan Knights. The Swan Knights, honestly, the standard variety, are pretty underwhelming in the current patch. They tend to lose out quite a lot, despite having hit points. They can hold their ground against low tier units, of course, but whenever the going gets tough, they tend to fold more quickly than you would expect them to. These Halberdiers are sort of in position. Meanwhile, the Talon Knights are sort of the big brother of the Swan Knights. They certainly are not underwhelming. A very strong unit, will hold the line for a long, long time. There's also a unit of Haven Guard down here. How interesting. Meanwhile, you can see that the Orcs are just sort of engaging the line all the way along. The Belfalas Marines are getting into position. The Javelins will be a good tool as well, provided they're used on the right units. Orc Marauders are not the right unit to use them on, however. Certainly not. Let's get into this line battle. Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms are a very, very good standard infantry unit. Probably the best of the human kingdoms at the moment. Although I believe that the Gondor infantry will have that crown in the next patch. Rightfully so as well, because it's more Gondor's sort of area of expertise than Dol Amroth's. Dol Amroth certainly took all the magic with them when they left Gondor, unfortunately, but hopefully that will be rectified in the next patch. The Orc Marauders are sort of blobbing up. They will actually do a decent amount of damage to the Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms, courtesy of that armour piercing. We can see that the primary bunch of Stewed Fungus's army is focusing in over here, and you can see that they're really starting to push over here. The Sauron's Will went first, and then they just backed it up with all of this rubbish. All of these Orc Raiders. They probably won't make it through, but they will at least make the defenders' lives uncomfortable. And while if we look over here, we can see what's left of Globox's cavalry certainly being through the ringer after being engaged by those Bolg's Champions. Oh, there's some routing Orc Raiders, and that Melkor's Chosen. But the Melkor's Chosen, of course, got focused down. Again, I think that the Orcs have this one, to be honest with you. Last time Umbar was able to win in this situation, and this is exactly the sort of battle that the Orcs like, one where they can really bring their numbers in. Only half of Escal Nordia's army is left though, and his was the army which I singled out as probably being the most dangerous. The artillery is going to be able to get some really nice shots, and it needs to. It really does need to at this point. The archers and the artillery positions are what Dol Amroth needs to do all their work at this point. On the other side, the Misty Mountains and Mordor are going to have... They're going to have trouble breaking through this lower area, to be honest with you. The dismounted Swan Knights have taken quite a few losses to the Uruks and the Morannon Maulers, but it's more the Talon Knights and the Haven Guard that are going to do the damage, although the Haven Guard are leaving. There is actually some gaps appearing over here. Escal Nordir is sending up his Gundabad Guard. We can get in a little closer. You can see that standard Uruks are not going to... They're not going to cut the mustard against Talon Knights. It is a rather strange formation that Dol Amroth have taken up though, although I do appreciate the nice long line that has formed. It looks nice. Meanwhile, you can see that these Belfalas Marines are targeting the Witch Realm Pikemen. That is an excellent target because of course Dol Amroth have not got any pikemen on the field, and in a prolonged fight pikemen can really make a difference, and they are being sprayed down by 2 units of javelins combined. Now the Gundabad Guard, they may be a spearman unit, but they are a very good spear unit, so they will be able to win against Dol Amroth men-at-arms if they are not reinforced, but there are some Tarnastian Guard ready to back them up and shore up the line. You can see that Tundra's Fox is also moving in the bulk of his forces at this point. We shall see what comes of that. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look over on this little avenue of attack. The Tirathea Wardens are still here. This is still the same unit, and they've not taken a single casualty, I don't think. But again, now with the Uruks sort of starting to get into the fight, there should be a little bit more movement on this front. This unit of White Knights could still be crucial if there are gaps for it to escape. And over here we can see that Glowbox's cavalry has flanked around into what remains of Escal Nordir's units. The Tirathea Knights getting a charge onto those Orc Halberdiers, getting a lot of damage done, but they are also taking a lot of casualties in return now. Meanwhile, these Knights of the Silver Swan with a charge into the Witch Realm Hammers, only killing 2 of them. But again, at this point, the Glowbox's cavalry is naturally very depleted. So he's just trying to get as many kills as he can on important targets. And there is these White Knights. The White Knights will do better on sustained melee mostly, but the Witch Realm Hammers are still so deadly that it's not really going to matter too much. Still, some more attritional casualties suffered. Escal Nordir's army has certainly suffered the most in terms of the attention of cavalry. Meanwhile, if we look over here, Stewed Fungus's largely garbage army, the fight is even over here, at least allegedly. But with Haven Guard and Edhalon Halberdiers in the way, the door has been firmly slammed shut, especially with that javelin support in the background. And you can hear the artillery. That is a point-blank shot. A bit of friendly fire though, and again, a bit of friendly fire is often all it takes in a situation like this. You can see that the Orcs are just sort of poised. They're encircling, and as the Misty Mountains and the other Mordor armies sort of come around here and start to try and really crunch through up this avenue of attack here, I do worry for how the defenders are going to deal with that. Donald Kingslayer's Talon Knights are here. That is a point-blank hit, but it's primarily fodder that's over there, so it's not really going to matter. There are the Witch Realm Pikemen that took the javelin blows. And again, against Talon Knights in Shield Wall, the pikes probably won't pay dividends. Again, going for fodder, questionable. At this point I would say save your artillery until you're really struggling. Come on, if we look down there, some of Glowbox's cavalry is still alive, still being a nuisance. You can see that the Mountain Trolls managed to catch what I believe are the White Knights, which is bad news for them. That horse's back just got broken by a Troll's cudgel. Some rear charges going on over here. Definitely worthwhile. The Tarnastian Guard is probably the one aspect of the Dol Amroth infantry, other than the militia tier units, of course, which I find a little bit lackluster. They look cool, but they don't seem to... I guess that's just a problem with spears in general there. The Mountain Uruk Blades doing a decent job against them. Going to need some reinforcements down here pretty soon, because the Talon Knights, the balance of forces is now only evenly matched. These Mountain Orc Berserkers really getting stuck in. As soon as those Belfalas Marines are out of ammo, their services are going to be required in melee to hold this line. Because now that the defenders have committed to sort of this random peninsula, which they set up earlier on, they do need to reinforce it. Well, you can see there's a lot of trolls. You can see that over here the Gundabad Guard have done their work. The Dol Amroth men-at-arms were not reinforced. There goes Imrahil, so there goes Glowbox. These Dol Amroth men-at-arms have really suffered under the wrath of what's remaining of Escal Nordir's army. You can see these Haven Guard pulling out. Interestingly enough though, there is actually a gap in the middle here where the defenders have been victorious. These White Knights now have decided that the time is now, maybe? Are they going to leave? It looked like they were going to for a second there, which they do need to, because they need to bring the lower half of this line under control somehow, and a good swift cav charge from the White Knights would be just what they need. The Haven Guard are being targeted by arrows, but again, it's lower tier archers at best. The Mountain Uruk archers, I've said, are not bad, and they aren't. If it was the crossbows, though, they're the things to be really concerned about. Are they still alive? Well, it's hard to tell. I would be interested to know where the Temple Inquisitors are in this mess. I don't think they've been committed yet. The Heavy Goblin Infantry and the Mountain Uruk Blades taking on what's remaining of the dismounted Swan Knights and the Talon Knights. We're about halfway through the battle at the moment, and I would say, based on percentages, the defenders are ahead by quite a lot, but not enough. Not in a situation where they're outnumbered 2 armies to 1. Unless they manage to get it down to the situation where the attackers have got no answer for a unit of White Knights at the end, I can't see them winning this. Meanwhile, we have the Edhelond Halberdiers. The Edhelond Halberdiers are a majestic sight when they're in formation. So effective as well. Definitely, in my opinion, the best halberdier in the game at the moment. At least the best standard halberdier. I suppose the Fountain Guard still claim the title of best halberd. You don't see them as much anymore now that the shielded Fountain Guard are around. People tend to prefer them, and I would agree with them. These Tarnastian Guard are sort of not really in the right formation. They're being flanked by a unit of Heavy Goblin Infantry with their rusted shields. These Nimrodel Rangers have pulled out their swords. They are not fantastic in melee, the Nimrodel Rangers, but they are at least something. These Haven Guard, defeat seems certain for the Haven Guard, so this line is so far gone now that the Gundabad Guard and the Mountain Uruk Blades are sufficient to put a unit of Haven Guard on alert. Those Nimrodel Rangers need to get in there and reinforce the Haven Guard before the hit points are all dried up. Those White Knights, they need to be utilised sooner rather than later. They are charging into a crumbling section of line up here. Escal Nordi has sent forward his elite units, his Witch Realm Hammer Guard, and I assume his Black Guard, or what's remaining of them anyway, are up here. Yep, the Witch Realm Black Guard, and as a result, the defenders are really starting to struggle over here, and I think that they should have used all their cavalry. Well, they should have got all their cavalry sort of back there and in reserve for this sort of situation. I think that the weird formation they set up here was not the ideal thing. As we look in here, the frame rate goes to hell when you zoom in. There is a unit of Haven Guard up here, and victory does seem certain for them. But I think that the casualties and just the fact that the formation is crumbling is going to be what does the defenders in. They don't have enough reinforcements to reinforce every place that needs it. If we look down here, we can see there is a random catapult, which I didn't see the... I assume that's the defenders' catapult. They just committed the crew. But this unit of Tirathea Wardens has only lost not even 20 units since the start of the battle, and they're still holding. So over here the defenders can take some heart. They might need these Tirathea Wardens somewhere else in the battle in a minute, so it's good for them. We look there, Stewed Fungus and Escal Nordi are still making decent inroads, but now finally the White Knights have left the safety, or relative safety, of the land island. The defending artillery is still firing, but maybe not. Maybe things could have gone better for them. The Witch Realm Blackguard are going to take a rear charge from those White Knights. Well, kind of anyway. I think this is just a general rear charge, just to try and get as many kills on this section of line as possible, which is good. They're going to need to. There are also javelins being thrown in, I assume on the Witch Realm Blackguard. You can see them over here. The Belfast Marines are going to be key. Enfilading fire. Actually, no, they're firing into the backs of the Morgul Chosen and the Hammer Guard. So yeah, things are stabilising thanks to the cav charges and the javelins up there, but down here is going to be at the expense of down here, to be honest with you. As we can see, the Dol Amroth archers have been committed, and they are the only thing keeping this section of line intact. And you can see that where the halberdiers were stationed, there's been no movement for the attackers. It's everywhere else, and that just goes to show how strong the Edhelond halberdiers are. They've been getting a lot of kills on these standard orcs, and if they can sort of stay in position, they will continue to. But of course, they are momentarily going to be surrounded, because this Heavy Goblin Infantry and Mountain Uruk Blades are going to force their way through these archers and rangers. And also back here we can see that the Haven Guard...
They have lost half their men.
The Haven Guard have stabilised a little bit over here, and they are fighting. But again, they run the risk of being surrounded as well, because it's down here where the archers are on station. There's some Heavy Goblin Spears being moved up by Tundra's Fox. The enemy have still got a few units in reserve. I'd be concerned for the presence of the Temple Inquisitors wherever they may be. It does in fact look like the attackers are going to commit more units over here, and indeed they finally had enough of that unit of Tirithea Wardens and have decided to try and force their way past. But there is another layer, so once again they're going to take quite a few attritional casualties going through here, and the defensive line will not budge for the time being, unless the Temple Inquisitors are somewhere in that mess, but I somehow doubt it. Meanwhile, we can see that those White Knights, they've lost about 10 men in their unit. But if we look over here, the Uruk bodyguard, insta-backs those Witch Realm Blackguard. We look up close, the Witch Realm Blackguard going toe-to-toe with the Belfast Marines. Victory seems certain for the Belfast Marines, are you sure? That's surprising, but these Javelins, if they still have ammunition, that's very bad for them because they're now being engaged by elite units in melee. I assume that one doesn't because it's running away. But yeah, if we look over here, defeat is a distinct possibility over here. There is still Haven Guard in there, 53 of them. There's 36 Haven Guard there, so up here they will probably still win, but the damage done because of the sort of broken line in places might be too much to bear. And we can see over here the White Knights, which got a decent rear charge into the Orcs over here, are about to be sandwiched by these heavy Goblin Spears, so they do need to get out of there. Heavy Goblin Spears, of course, do have that armour piercing, which does mean they are more effective than standard spears. There goes one of the Orc generals. I assume that is Escal Nordiers based on the position of it. You look at the dead bodies. Quite a lot of destruction, and then down here we can see, in an effort to try and keep the Halberdiers and the Haven Guard from being flanked, this one unit of Belfast Marines is being tasked with holding back the tide, led by Olar Kai and backed up by all manner of infantry units. They are not going to be able to do that. Yeah, the Halberdiers are going to fall, unfortunately. They will do a decent amount of damage before they go down, though. Can the defenders pull this off? What is that? Well, the Orc Raiders are routing, so they will actually be able to freely turn around unless they're engaged from the front. I'm not sure I'd commit the Orc bodyguards to that, because they'll take losses. The Olar Kai being committed en masse. Well, well, well. We can see that back here there are the White Knights. Some artillery fire coming in onto these pikemen. The White Knights do need to avoid the pikes, and as we can see here there are actually a unit of hidden Blackback Berserkers. It's very bad news for the defenders because they are a savage unit to deal with. Meanwhile, if we look in here, finishing off these Tirithea marksmen. There were the Haven Guard that are just down here. This fight down here has turned to chaos now, and that's very bad for the defenders. Chaos is always going to favour the Orcs. And again, down here, the Halberdiers are also just being munched up by a combination of Blackback Berserkers and Olar Kai, so this lower defence down here is falling. The higher defence, however, is working out pretty well, but they do need to finish off all of these sort of straggler units so that they can sort of set up a new defence. There goes one of the generals. That must be Stewed Fungus's. So that means there's only one Orc general left alive, and that is the Misty Mountains general. Now, unfortunately, over here, this Orc bodyguard from Stewed Fungus was able to get in behind and finish off this unit of Belfast Marines. If this unit had ammunition, that's a real tragedy. If we look back over here, there are Haven Guard. This unit of Belfast Marines still has ammunition.
Very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Yeah, I'm finding it hard to dispute that. If we look down there, you can see that stuff like the Temple Inquisitors still haven't been committed yet. And they are very, very capable, as I've said many times before. I'm sure people are sick of me saying that. Where are the White Knights? There they are. The defenders need them now more than ever, but unfortunately I think it might be too late, because pouring up the hill, led by the Olar Kai and the forces of Mordor and the Misty Mountains, they're going to be able to get into the back lines of what the defenders set out. Again, I wouldn't say the defenders did much wrong in terms of how they constructed their line and how they used their cavalry, other than the fact I think they should have pulled them back over here maybe, later on. I feel as though the shape of their line was where they went wrong. I feel like they tried to defend too much, and I think they should have set out their defensive line a little bit more solidly. I feel like it was too flimsy in places, and it was easily cracked. Of course, they could still win. If we look on the mini-map there, we can see that it is a sea of blue, and seeing as this is from the perspective of one of the Orc factions, that's not good for Dol Amroth. And these Tirithea Wardens, they're not going to be able to hold the line now. They're being attacked in the back by 2 units of ORC. And the Orcs are flooding forward. The defenders are trying to set up a sort of new line, but it is going to be too late. These Uruk bodyguard have certainly paid for themselves, and they're not going to be able to set up a new line. All of these sort of ancillary units of Uruk archers are going to sort of pin these units in place, not going to allow them to form up, and then the Orcs are going to come forwards. And now the artillery has nothing but meat to fling. Potentially useful. 3 of the generals are dead after all. We look down here, the Haven Guard are still fighting. The Haven Guard really are a very, very strong unit, and especially when you have just heavy goblin infantry to commit against them. They're going to get a lot of kills, but they're not going to be enough in this situation. And also 1-to-1 they would not be able to take on the Temple Inquisitors, wherever they may be. Just pikes. Sort of defending against the cavalry primarily. See up here, heavy goblin halberds. The White Knights need to do something now, because their armies are falling apart. And if we look there, yeah, percentage of enemies killed is, the defenders are now 10% behind. The rest of this battle is just going to be a cinematic formality. You can see the Talon Knights and the Tirithea Wardens going to be doing their best, fighting back to back. These are against units that have already seen combat, so they will do some damage here initially. Again, this unit of Haven Guard bloodied, seen a lot of action. The Orcs are closing in to seal their doom. These spearmen are facing the wrong way also. Mountain Uruk archers. Those are Uruk halberds. Some Sauron's will lagging behind as well. What are these White Knights going to do? Go on then, Imrahil. Show us what you got. I mean, you're not going to be able to charge here. There's a unit of Mountain Uruk pikes. I remember back in 0.86 when the several pikemen were armor piercing. There still are armor piercing pikes actually. There are, I think it's the Gamp Rim and the Southron pikemen are both armor piercing, which makes them pretty good, but they're also both pretty expensive. Pikemen were quite overpowered back in 0.86 if my memory is correct. Well, more Uruks. There are just too many Orcs. You can see this blob of Olai is. This was the thing that broke the defenders really. It was able to just go up that halberd line and have its way with it. And when they followed that up with Blackback Berserkers, there was no way the defenders could recover from that. And that was the weak point of their line. The sticky out bit. And yeah, they're going to get in behind the lines. Engage the Belfalas Marines in melee. There's some Uruks there. There's also going to be some Trolls. As we can see here, Eggslop's army. There's a lot of lower tier units, but they're just going to be bleeding these Haven Guard. This was a fun battle to watch, though, I must admit. Maybe needs a little bit of work in terms of the balancing of it, but it was fun. There are the Blackback Berserkers. Oh dear. We're going to get a sort of a rear charge. That Uruk bodyguard, Stewed Fungus, is still alive. How about that? I think the Catapult crew, or the Trebuchet crew is... Yep, it's been committed to melee. These poor guys. You've done your job, Catapult crew. Now you must go into battle against armored trolls. If that isn't a fuck you, I don't know what is. Meanwhile, these Tirithea Wardens, they are a good unit as a spearman. Multiple HP spears will hold for a long time, but things were looking good for the defenders early on. Those cav charges on Eskal Nordia's army were brutal, but I think that ultimately the defensive line and just the sheer number of Orcs meant it was always going to be a hard task for Dol Amroth to do much here. The White Knights, presumably trying to get some cav charges. They really need to be careful of the pikes though. I mean, at this point they need to ignore this and just head up there to where the action is. I mean, there's still a good just over 3,000 frames in this fight yet. So it does go to show how durable some of the Dol Amroth high tier units really are. Still some Halberdiers in here, still some Haven Guard, going toe to toe with these Uruks, padding their kill counts. These Olag High still doing their thing. There's still some Guardians of Khan Doom left alive. Despite being savaged early on, we're inside a troll. How frightful. Yeah, the Guardians of Kharndoom, definitely, overall I would say they're probably my pick for the most effective mainline infantry unit in the game at the moment. In terms of how much they cost, in terms of what they add to the faction of Gundabad as a whole. I just like them. I feel as though they rarely ever do badly. This is one of the few times where I feel as though, well, we'll see, because this is from Escal Nordia's perspective, but this is one of the few times where I think they will struggle to pay for themselves simply because they were the target of Glowbox's cavalry. Something you really don't want to be a target of. You can see that some of the halberds are pointing the other way just to try and mitigate the cav charge damage. And as it happens, once again we get a nice shot of a surrounded unit fighting back to back. This time it's Tirithea Wardens being crushed underfoot by Olag High. So yeah, victory for the Orcs here. Belfalas has fallen. It is quite a nice map to use though. I mean, it is in many ways reminiscent of a lot of the more standard pitch battle maps that you see. But it is also, it has terrain features. One of the problems with more standard pitch battle maps is they're just flat fields with no really distinguishing features. Whereas this one, it has this sort of defensive island, it has the coast, it has a few hills, it has a few places you can be defensive, and it also has some trees even if you wanted to do like a free-for-all on this map would be quite interesting, because it might, you would all deploy sort of on the sides and then it would be a sort of race to the middle. King of the hill, as it were. But yes, as we can see, the final vestiges of the Dol Amroth army are just being squashed, and I feel like this will be a good time to just ride with the cavalry until the end. Imrahil is still alive. I mean, he and all of his men, bar 2, are bloodied. Of course, White Knights sharing the same armour as the Haven Guard. Definitely a very strong cav unit. In sustained melee, very tough indeed. Off the charge, they do lack a little something next to some of their peers, Knights of Illuminus and Carnardon Knights in particular. And I believe they are being
much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Renamed to the Sons of Yore in the next patch, whenever that may be. You know, I think that the combination of Teemo coming back to the development team and the release of Shadow of War has led to the patch being delayed a little longer than it would have been. But you know, on the plus side, it does mean that when it finally comes out, it will be quite all-encompassing. At least that's what I hope. I hope that I'll actually be able to start doing the faction overviews when the next patch comes out, because I can't imagine there'll be a lot of movement on the factions next time anyway. A nice crunching charge onto those heavy goblin spears, dealing a heavy amount of damage to them. Will they just be committed to melee and left in there? I think so. I mean, that's generally how this works. There's no way that the defenders can win now. Dol Amroth are one of the factions that will probably receive a little bit of a nerf, I think. Outside of the Woodland Realms and Gundabad, it's my opinion that Dol Amroth are the strongest. And part of that is to do with the Etalon Halberdiers being so relatively cheap for being so good. And of course the fact that their cavalry is very strong as well, all around. Namely, these White Knights. See the Uric bodyguard of Stewed Fungus, which is still alive. Admittedly, the battle was probably already won when they engaged those Belfalas Marines in melee, but they've still done a lot of work. They'll get promotions at the end of this. Again, there's still a few frames to go. Now here comes the main force of the army again. The heavy golden spears do get their killing done relatively quickly. Faster than most spears, though, with that armour piercing. Here come the vast majority of the elite units. Sauron's Will, Guardians of Kharndoom, Olag High. There's Imrahil. He looks horrendous actually. He's one of those units like Azov, which hasn't really got a proper model. He looks like the Tango man because he's orange. Here are the pikes. Are they going to get into melee? Will Imrahil die on the end of a pike? His head will certainly be on one at the end of this neck. Oh, there he goes. No, he died to... I think those are all bodyguards. Yep. So there we go. Victory for the Orcs. Quite a substantial victory as well. Again, these scenarios are works in progress, of course, so a little bit of rebalancing to be done, but I do think the defenders also made a couple of strange calls with regards to how they set their line out. But there we go. So if we look there, I'm not really sure which one of those is which. I would imagine that Glowbox got slightly more kills on behalf of his cav, and also the fact he had more cav units, so he'd probably have less men deployed. So I think that the 6,234 Glowbox gets the most kills. Meanwhile, on the attackers, the Misty Mountains, Tundra's Fox getting the most. And again, the two Mordor armies getting the least, and then Escal Nordir right in the middle. So let's have a look here. This is Escal Nordir's army, so again, Witcher-Elm Pikemen getting a decent amount of kills between them, considering they were pelted with javelins. The Gundabad Guard doing a good job against those men-at-arms. But I think what I really want to... Well, the Guardians of Khan Doom, 87 casualties inflicted. You know, not great for a unit of elite infantry under normal circumstances, but here you can forgive them that. Hammer Guard with 164, they were really the centrepiece of that push at the top of the line, which was one of the first places we saw the defensive line start to bow. But 329 on a unit of Witcher-Elm Blackguard. You know, again, that many kills on a single unit when you're on the attack is a real win. And yeah, the Witcher-Elm Blackguard are certainly my favourite Gundabad unit at the moment, just because of how, in terms of, well, they are the hyper tier unit, as it were, of Gundabad, which I really prefer to use over the Hammer Guard. Now, I used to prefer the Hammer Guard because of the slightly cheaper cost and the fact they had better charge, but now I'm all about the Blackguard, now that I've used them a few times to good effect myself, and I've seen them used to good effect many times, including this one. So yeah, well done to the attackers. I do think that maybe they had the natural advantage in the first place, but even so, it was still fun to watch. Nice to have a sort of more open battle with a lot of cavalry, but I think that next time I'll be doing a slightly more defensive battle. I think it will be another one of Horton's scenarios, which was played recently, which was on the map, well, using the map, the Elven Front, which I'm a little bit curious to see how he managed to do that one, because again, it's rather similar to this one in this fact there's a sort of land island in the middle, but there's also several other interesting sort of points of reference on the map. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for that.